Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly series of Shirim on the Zohar Kadosh on the Parsha, and we find ourselves in Parshas Vayishlach. But before going into the Parsha itself and into the sugya of the Parsha, which kind of represents exactly what the Nakuda we're going to be speaking about is, I saw a Nakuda from the Bal HaSulam this week, from the Heilige Bal HaSulam, who in describing the value of publishing his Biur of the Sulam on the Zohar Kadosh, he describes why he called it a sulam. He describes why he refers to this biur as a ladder. And he says that really the world that is most inaccessible to us and the world that holds the most goodness for us is the world of the Zohar Kadosh. When we enter into the world of the Chavraya of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and we enter into the space, into the musical space, into the calmness of that northern territory of Eretz Yisrael with Rashbi v'Chaverov, and there's a concealment hidden on that world. There's a darkness that covers over that world. There's a barrier. There's a gate that needs to be broken through in order to enter in. As the Zohar Kadosh explains in the Hakdama, that in order to enter into the celestial chamber of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai v'Chaveirav and his friends, a person had to have the capacity of transforming the bitter into the sweet, the mariru to mtiku, and the choshech into or. That was the prerequisite, meaning to say that just as Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai uncovered the depth of the Zohar HaKadosh in a cave, so too the access point that each and every person is going to have towards the Zohar HaKadosh is also going to be like a cave. And a cave looks externally like it is the same as any other thing. From a side view, it does not appear that there is any depth there. It appears that it is concealed and covered over like every other part of the mountain wall. But it's only when a person comes close enough to what they thought was a wall and they see that there's depth upon depth and omek lifnim me omek within it, only then a person digs down deeper and becomes part of the Chavraya of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. An unwillingness to accept the externality of the bitterness or the darkness, and an urgency to dig down into the depths of the matter to uncover the flowing river that draws down from Gan Eden itself, to illuminate the depths, to allow the depths of light to illuminate and flood the world. And in that place of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the prerequisite, the key towards opening that gate is simcha, of learning the Zohar b'simcha, attaching oneself with simcha to the text that they're reading. The Arizal himself, says the Bala Sulam, hinted to this when he said that the Iker vessel for my Hasaga was a simcha. I had a joy that was over and above the joy of the previous generations, a joy that was built upon the joy of the previous generations. But the secret is ki b'simcha teitzeu, that it's with joy that a person opens themselves up, and it's with joy that a person changes who they are and they give themselves more strength than what they had the moment before. As we've said so often in the name of the Balatanya, that a tefach sochek, a sad tefach, a sad measurement, is one where the fingers are measured very, very close to each other with a closeness, no separation. But a tefach sochek, when it opens up, is when there's space, there's air, there's a revach bein hadvekim, there's an expansivity, there's a breath, there's a place, there's an openness and a possibility of freedom and playfulness that emerges in a moment of joy. And a person cracks themselves up. They learn how to break free from the confinement of their static self, and they open up the sense of the dynamism that rests at the heart of the soul, that it can run and return and run and return and laugh, and it can uncover the depth within simplicity and the simplicity within depth. And so it's a joy that is emergent from the Zohar HaKadosh, a silent, steady, humble joy, a sober joy that comes about by way of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai exiting the cave and Rav Pinchas Ben Yair seeing him and crying. He says, "Oh, woe to me that I've seen you as such. Woe to me that I've seen such suffering. Woe to me that I've seen the tzaddik suffering as such." And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai answers him. He says, "Oilecha, woe to you that you have seen me as such. Ashrecha she'reisi bikach. Praiseworthy are you for you have seen me as such. Shem lo reisi bikach lo haisi bikach. If you had not seen me as such, I wouldn't be as such." Meaning to say that the one thing that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came along to teach from the Ma'ara and the Zohar is that the body is the teacher, the Gevuros are the teacher, the Yitzhahara is the teacher. The entirety of the book of the Zohar is a book about why it's better to be a human being than to be a malach. And it's ultimately rooted in the answer that Moshe Rabbeinu gave to the malachim when it came time to question the giving of the Torah. Because ultimately the real question, as the Meforshim say, was with regards to Pnimiyas Torah. The malachim said, fine, give them the physical Torah, but Pnimiyas Torah you're going to give them? And Moshe Rabbeinu's answer is that once he grasps hold of the kisei, the chair, the source of the neshama of Klal Yisrael, which also comes from language of iskasia and kisui and concealment, it's specifically there that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to say, I am higher than a malach because I struggle. I'm higher than a malach because I descend down into the depths. I'm higher than a malach because I know what it means to taste the bitter and transform it into sweet. A malach cannot understand this. A malach doesn't understand the degradation. They stand, they do not walk. The Zohar Kadosh is a book of walking, as the Ramchal is masbir in the beginning of the Ijur Rabbah, in terms of the Yichud Hagan. It's all about walking. It's mahalchim bein ha'oimdim. The book is ultimately about why we're greater than the malachim, and it's specifically because we're less than the malachim, specifically because we need to descend down into the place of loss of meaning and the attempt to recreate and recuperate meaning from within the post-traumatic shards of an original meaning that has been lost. In the secret of translation, that we uncover the secret of the Aramaic of the Zohar HaKadosh. The Ramak says that the malachim are disgusted by Aramaic. They're disgusted by it because they don't need it. They don't need those oznayim. They don't need those handles to hold on to something which is ungraspable to them, because what they grasp is functional and it's static. It's grasped and it is what it is without changing. But for a yid, for a neshama, which is ultimately rooted in a far higher place, because it has a relationship with the iskasya as well as the iskalia of revelation and concealment, to allow for a tnuas ha'izchadshus b'toich ha'tainu katmidi, to allow for the perpetual renewal of strength within the perpetuality of strength, so that we have the benefit of renewing the enjoyment, but also the benefit of the continuity of the enjoyment itself, the secret of the descent that allows the ascent to mark a far deeper impression upon experience, so that it can actually experience something engraved, something real, through the resistance of what it means to be a human being in a world that pushes against the desire of the soul to reach the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're encountering a tzimtzum. The malachim don't encounter tzimtzum, and therefore the malachim don't need Aramaic, they don't need Acharayim, they don't fall asleep, they don't dream, they don't have the ability to get lost in translation, nor do they have the capacity of recuperating and recovering a deeper language than even the original one that has been broken. As the Maharal says, that Lashon Targum in its shoresh is even higher than Lashon HaKodesh, because it reveals the freedom of the mind to utilize language towards its benefit, to use language as a ladder that extends beyond itself, to allow language to go to the place where language itself has to translate itself, because it speaks of a place that is so far beyond the mind's capacity to grasp that it takes me to a place where my only hasaga, my only grasp, is imagination and translation. As Rav Kook explains in the beginning of Reish Milin, that the Os Aleph, why is the Os Aleph the Aramaic translation of Limud? Theoretically, the beginning shouldn't be Aramaic. It shouldn't be hidden within the slumber-like condition of falling unconscious to a clarity and descending down into the depths of concealment, and then having to recuperate and recover and refine the meaning that was once there. It should be an originality. It should be Limud. Why are we seeing in the origination of the Aleph Beis, in the Os Aleph, that it's a translation of Limud, which means Ulpan? And Zak the Heiliger of Kook, he says that all intelligible processing, all thought, is already an act of translation, because if it's graspable, if it can be said, it could be articulated, then ultimately it is derivative and it is expressive of something that is no longer the unspeakable essence. Because if we're thinking it and we're talking about it, then ultimately it is not the original thing. It's already after its simsum, and therefore everything is already an act of translation. And the job of a yid is to learn the secret of translation, of Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum, of learning how to descend down into the concealment of that which is outside of Eretz Yisrael, the Itim v'Dibos, those towns that Chazal tell us that a person has to say Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum, including the names Itim v'Dibos, which are names of towns that are outside of Eretz Yisrael, that have not necessarily been unified with Eretz Yisrael. But why do we have to include that within Torah Shebechsav? Because ultimately Targum is about including outside of Eretz Yisrael within Eretz Yisrael, the expansion of the borders and the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, which is a poyel demyoni, which is a hint towards a future time when Eretz Yisrael is going to be mispashet l'chol ha'artzios, and it's going to transform in a healthy, calm, beautiful, wonderful way of peace and shalom and illumination and radical clarification of that which is good and that which is bad with the light of Mashiach Tzidkenu. But it's the secret of including that which remains outside of the picture within the frame itself. That's the secret of Targum, and that's why the Malachim don't need it, and that's why the Zohar Kadosh is written in Targum. Rabbi Nachman says, aside from speaking about Targum and translation so powerfully in Torah Yutes, he also explains in Sichos Aran that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came along and purified the language of Aramaic through the Zohar Kadosh, meaning to say that the entirety of the Zohar Kadosh is a logic of translation. It is the process of being higher than the Malachim because we're lower than the Malachim. It is the descent for the sake of the ascent, the descent into a loss of original meaning for the recreation of Torah Shebal Peh, which is the Pishnayim Beruchecha, which is the Tosefes Kishut, and the ability for a Ben Adam to reveal that we can walk while the Malachim are stuck standing. And this is why we find in this week's Parsha itself, in Parshas Vayishlach, no, we saw it last week in Parshas Vayetze, but we're also encountering it at the beginning of Parshas Vayishlach, which is the secret of Yagar Sahadusa, that when it came to Gal Eid, when it came to affixing that separation, that pillar that separated Lavan Ha'arami, which is the unpure form of translation, which is trickery, devoid of any essential meaning, and Yaakov Avinu, who learned to take the secret and the kalim of translation from the house of Lavan, but to apply it to the depth of meaning that Yaakov Avinu had, which is the secret of Shnai Mikra V'Yechad Targum. So we see that in that place, Lavan refers to it as Yagar Sahadusa. Yagar Sahadusa is the place where Aramaic invades or finds application within Torah Shebechsav itself, which is an amazing degradation at first glance. How could it be that this secondary, disgusting language to the Malachim finds itself in the expression of revealed and radical truth? I understand if Torah Shebal Peh, the Gemara, the Zohar has to be in Aramaic, fine. Naniach, I've lost original meaning and I have to recuperate and recreate by way of imagination, like the interpretation of a dream, to extract meaningfulness from within the death of meaningfulness. But in Torah Shebechsav, which is meant to reveal the certainty of the first principle, why is it that I find the presence and the specter and the reminder of Aramaic here? What do I need Aramaic for? I don't have any need for Aramaic. Elama, it's the secret that contained within the original whole of the Torah is the secret that it will eventually break and fall under misunderstanding, and it's specifically our job to recuperate from within that descent down into misunderstanding, the irreducible light of the Torah HaKadosha that continues to persist in spite of its own death, which has to be translated. It's the translation. It's what we have to learn when we descend into exile, which is why Shemos, when we get displaced for the first time after Gan Eden, where we encounter Shnai Mikra V'Yechad Targum, which Rabbeinu Ephraim points out is the Roshei Tevos of Shemos, because the only way out of exile is with the awareness that, okay, I'm descending now into a place of speechlessness and to a loss of certainty, a loss of direct language, a loss of panim el panim. I'm descending into a place of ach ba'ach, of concealment, of wandering, of scampering in my mind to try and recuperate some sense of an irreducible trace that I can't quite grasp. But it's specifically from there that I'm going to come out with the great gifts. It's specifically by way of the descent into Targum. And that's why we see the hint of Yagar Sahadusa being included within the Torah Shebechsav itself. It's the birur of Lavan Ha'arami. It's the taking of Aramaic and revealing the secret of Mashiach Tzidkenu, which is Ruach HaPenu Mashiach Hashem, which is the Roshei Tevos of Arami and Meir, and the secret of Rabbi Meir, who knew how to learn from Acher himself, because he knew the secret of once you take the innermost panemius of the Rimon that Rabbi Meir found, which was the innermost point of what he had to receive from his Rebbe, then once you uncover the innermost panemius point, then you can enter into the realms and the Hechalos of translation, which is the Rimon itself, which is the part that theoretically he had to throw away. And Rabbi Meir is also able to include the Gvuros and the Levushim and the need for translation within the secret of Torah Shebechsav itself. It's the fact that Rabbi Meir was able to say 48 faces of Tumah and 48 faces of Tahara when it came to understanding the Torah, because he had the depth of the secret of Elu ve'elu Divrei Elokim Chayim, the secret of Bina, which is Meskala from Arich Anpin and Keser. As we know that Rabbi Meir was the Arich Bedoro, he was the light of Keser, and it was all about his Achiza, and it's the Kulam Stimai al Yedei Rabbi Meir, that the Stima'a, the Moicha Stima'a, the ability to perceive the illumination of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, specifically by way of the concealment of the Butzina de Kardinusa, which is the secret of translation, which is the secret of going down into concealment and elevating it back up. And that's the secret of Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is rooted in last week's Parsha as well, in Vayetze Yaakov, where it teaches us that Yaakov Avinu referred to this place of Aramaic, of Yagar Sahadusa, as Gal Eid. Gal Eid, the Arizal points out in Kavanos and Spir Omer, is the Gilui of Lag BaOmer, because it's the secret of Eid, which is Bitachon, which is the fact that I can come to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu even when I don't feel that I have an absolute certainty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my life, because an absolute certainty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my life would leave no room for Bitachon. Bitachon is built out of the descent down into a territory that appears to be devoid of the illuminating and affirmative presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and specifically in that descent down, as Chachma descends down into Bina, it's specifically there that I have to regain my strength and find that light again. It's the secret of translation. It's the secret of descending down, down, down. And it's in that place of the bitachon and the shame of Aleph, Chaf, Tes, Dalid, Mem, which is Roshei Tevos, Ach, Achrei, Kitov achris davar merishi, so that something that is revealed fundamental at the end is greater than what is revealed at the beginning. Again, highlighting that secret of translation, the pishnayim, the shnayim mikra ve'echad targum, the ability to elevate the broken pieces back into the whole and to reveal how they force the whole to express itself in a far more profound way. The inclusion of Yagar Sahadusa, this is the kavana of Lag BaOmer, of Eim Gal, the revelation of Bina, which has the ability of being mamtik all of the dinim b'sharasham and elevating all things. And so we find in this territory of the Parshios, between Vayetze and Vayishlach, between leaving and arriving, which is the process of walking, which is the Ratzav V'Shov, which are the two malachim of Sandal and Matat, these two kruvim that guard the Aron Kodesh, the Lahat Acher Misapeches, that guards the entry back into Gan Eden. The secret of the Zohar Kadosh is learning how to slow down the Lahat Acher Misapeches to open up the gates to enter back into Gan Eden, and it takes shape by way of making space for the need for translation. The book of the Zohar is a book of love, and it's a book of Bali Tshuva, and it's a book of marriage, and it's a book of connectivity between two opposites, and it's ultimately a book about the ascendancy of gold over silver, which is the secret of the Gvuros over and above the Chasadim, which is the secret of the Kalim and the concealment valves over and above the points of revelation, and why in the Zohar Kadosh it's the strangers and the impoverished ones who walk around carrying secrets, as this week's Zohar Kadosh says, in terms of the Tefillah Li'ani Kiyatov, that it's the tefillah of the impoverished one who has absolutely nothing, who has fallen into darkness, that is most beloved by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this tefillah forces HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, to put all other tefillahs on the side, because in the face of this tefillah, in the tefillah of Malchus, which is Leis Lemegar Meklum, in that place of the impoverishment of the self, which is aware of its need for Targum, unlike the Malachim who are disgusted by it, it's we who have the ability to elevate from the darkness itself the illumination of the Eim Gal, of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light. And that's the secret of what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, that yeah, okay, the Torah is never going to be forgotten. It might splinter apart into a million different pieces, and it's not going to be the same that it looked like, but it will never be forgotten, because we will always have the strength to descend down with the Chavraya Kadisha and the secret of B'chavivusa Talia Milsa, when a person has friends along the path of their spiritual process. So they have a Rebbe along the path of their spiritual process. They have Shalom between themselves and themselves, between themselves and the people that are important in their lives, between themselves and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the path to uncover our own Shnai Mikra V'Yachad Targum, to be Megala ultimately the secret of the Luchos Shnios within the Luchos Rishonos, which is the Hiskalus of the Torah of Atika Stima'o, which Rabbi Nachman describes in Torah Samech, is ultimately the secret of waking up from within a dream, and the secret of translating fallen experience by way of Sipuri Maisios Meshanim Kadmonios, and now it's specifically from within the Targum and the descent into Bina that a person is going to have the ability to reveal the illumination of Atik Yomin Yosef, which is the secret of Lashon HaKodesh and Targum Biachad. All of this also expresses itself in what we discussed last week with regards to Leah and Rachel. Yaakov Avinu, unlike Esav, needed to occupy the spiritual spectrum on both edges. He was Ishtam Yoshev Ohalim, two Ohalim, meaning to say that the entire time that Esav and Yaakov were born at the beginning, and Esav represented a particular strength, and Yaakov represented a particular strength, and ultimately Esav failed at his particular strength, and Yaakov had to trick Esav and retrieve the hidden strength of Esav and make it his own by buying the Bechorah. That's externally speaking the way that the narrative unfolded. But in truth, Soif Masav Machshavat Chila, that the Bechorah belongs to Yaakov Avinu, and that Yaakov Avinu is the one who has the Pishnayim, and nothing belongs to Esav. The head of Esav is buried in Marasa Machpelah because Lo Yidach Mimanu Nidach, and he has the din of a mummer. But ultimately speaking, everything is Yisrael, Yisrael Asher B'cha Aspire. And yes, there is a Metzias of Halo Ach Esav Liakov, that on a certain level, Esav and Yaakov appear to operate on the same playing field in the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's absolute infinitude, but from an even higher perspective, on the level of Reshad Lo Yada, there's a Giloy of Yaakov Ahavti ve'Esav Sanisi. There's a fundamental difference rooted in absolutely nothing other than the fact that there's a fundamental difference. That's rooted in absolutely nothing other than the fact that there's a difference, meaning it's ad ein sof. No matter what level of equality there appears to be, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always going to reveal that it's Nishmas Yisrael that comes out on top. And even though externally it looked like Yaakov had to take all of these things from Esav, ultimately it was bringing about all of the things that belonged to Yaakov to begin with, and now they're arriving in Yaakov's hands. And so Yaakov leaves after working through that process of translation, and he comes face to face with Esav again, now owning both parts of himself, owning the world of Leah, which originally belonged to Esav, and now is revealed to have been Yaakov's, and the world of Rachel, the world of Bina and the world of Malchus, the world of the mind and the world of the heart, the world of the heart and the world of the mouth, ultimately the world of unconsciousness and concealment and Alma de Eskasi, asia and that which can't be said, and the world of conscious expression, the world of rachel, which is that which can be expressed. And this is Yaakov coming to say, he says, Im lavan garti v'taryag mitzvah shamarti. Im lavan garti. I lived with Lavan. Garti is yagar, yagar tough, meaning yagar sahadusa down to the lowest expression imaginable. Garti, taryag mitzvahs. It's specifically there that I was able to translate all of the concealment and the opportunity to be megala kvod shemayim in the dir betachtonim, afilu bebeso shel Lavan. So Yaakov Avinu is facing Esav, saying, "You thought I would get caught up in the mix-up of translation and get caught up with Lavan Ha'arami. No, I have transformed the house of Lavan Ha'arami, and I have forced it to give me its gifts, which is the capacity of translation, which stems from the loftiest place imaginable, referred to as the Luban Ha'elyon, as that Aleph Ha'elyon, which is already the secret of needing to translate." And Yaakov Avinu is showing up again with both parts of himself, with both machanos. Yaakov Avinu needs to ensure that Yaakov sees he has Leah and Rachel. He has Leah and Rachel. He has the Alma de Iskasia, the world of concealment, the world of contemplation, the world of the desire to reach something that we know we're never going to reach, and the embitteredness that gives birth to a silent type of intense joy that comes about through the perpetual yearning of it all. And at the same time, we have the world of Rachel, which is the ability to actually do Avodas Hashem and engage in this world in a real way and actualize the potential that we experience, so that we're not just stuck in a transcendent trap that denies immanence, nor are we stuck in an immanent trap that denies transcendence, but rather we're above and below at the very same time in the secret of Yaakov, Chaval Nachlaso, that Yaakov is Oile ad Harosh v'Yored ad Hasof, and it's Ma'agel to the back, to the front, and it's Miyuchad, it's the Breach HaTichon, it's the Kav HaEmsai, it's the Nakuda of Teferes HaNe'elam, that is Miyached, it's the Shakyad, the Ilana, it's the life force at the heart of the tree, and it's the secret of the Yichud of the two sides of Yaakov with Leah and Rachel. And so we say this every day. We express this unification each and every day. We acknowledge to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem, just like Yaakov Avinu in his encounter with Lavan and his encounter with Esav, needed and ultimately was for the purpose of uncovering the two-sided nature of what it means to be a human being, to have a Leah and a Rachel, to have an ascendant part of myself of Bina and a lower part of myself of Malchus, and those two hays, and ultimately to reveal the unity between the two of them. So this is something that we do each and every day. And how do we do it each and every day? So in this Zohar Kadosh, we're going to see in a particular expression that we say at the end of Shemona Esrei, how it's revealing that we operate within these two wavelengths on the realm of Leah, the unconscious, concealed space of infinitude that we have a relationship to by way of sinna, which is not a hatred, but rather a recognition of the impossibility of satisfying the desire in that place. And then we also have the world of Rachel, which is the world of that which is revealed in our lives. So we have the revelation of our lives, and we have the concealment that rests just beneath the revelation of our lives. And ultimately, the goal is to make shalom between the two of them, like Yaakov, Ish, Tam, Yoshev, Ohalim, that it's a chibor of Leah and Rachel. Ta'chazi. This is the Zohar Kadosh on Daf Kuf Samach Tes in Parshas Vayishlach. Ta'chazi, come and see. David Malka Amar Yehiu Leratzin Imrefi Elin Milan de Isparshan. When David Malka Mashiach says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yehu Leratzin Imrefi Vehegyon Libi Lefanecha Hashem Tzuri V'Goyali, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the words of my mouth and the murmurings and the wonderings of my heart should be in front of you and pleasing in front of you. When David HaMelech says that, he's representing these two levels. And why is David HaMelech able to point this out? Because David HaMelech is Malchus, which is the place where the chibor of Leah and Rachel is ultimately taking place. Leah and Rachel are two ways of grasping Malchus. So Avada, David HaMelech is able to say that I have both of these, just as Yaakov Avinu is able to say that I have both of these. May my words of my mouth be pleasing. Elin Milind is Parshan. These are explicit words. These are things that are expressed. That's the world of Rachel. That's what's present in my life in a real way. The Hegyon Libi, and the contemplation of my heart, the murmuring of my heart. Elin Milind is Stimin de lo Yochel Barnash le Parsha loin befum yada. These are the words that remain concealed within a person's heart that cannot be expressed by way of the mouth. That's the world of Leah. That's what can't be expressed. On the world of Rachel, I'm expressing what it is that I'm doing. On the world of Leah, I'm coming to realize I have no idea what I'm doing. And then I come back to Rachel where I think I know what I'm doing. And then I come back to Leah and I realize I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's ultimately in the chibur of those two elements of knowing what I'm doing while knowing that I don't know what I'm doing, or not knowing what I'm doing while I know what I'm doing, ultimately is the deepest chibur. It's tachlis hayediyah shalom neda, the yichud of yediyah and lo yediyah at the very same time, above and below at the very same time, with neither losing its strength, but rather the opposition actually giving more strength to the opposite side itself. Hegyer Nibi Ilan Milan de Stimen. These are the concealed words de lo yachol barnash le parsha loim befumya, that a person cannot express in their mouths. This is that even when I express everything I want to express, I still have not yet expressed. Even if every word has been said, there's still something irreducible that is not being conveyed. That's the world of Leah. Dahu Hegyoin. This is the contemplation, the pre-thought of the mind, the osios hamachshava, the iu beliba that is taking shape within the heart of Leah. The lo yachol is parsha, that cannot be unfolded and cannot be expressed and cannot be explained explicitly. I can't tell you what it really is. Va'alda itztarich mila is parsha b'fumya. And as a result, because the heart cannot convey what it truly needs to convey, liba lefumya loigalia, that there's an irreducible depth to the heart of that ratzon hane'elam, which has the ability to come to the deepest place of being aware that it can't be masig, the infinite light. Because we say that leis machshava tvisa beklal, aval itvisu breusa liba. You can't grasp it by way of thought, but it can be grasped by way of the desire of the heart. The notion that the desire of the heart can come to grasp atzmuses barachas v'shalom is only there to ensure that we remember that even the innermost point of the heart can't grasp atzmuses barach. And when the Zohar Kadosh says aval itvisu breusa liba, it doesn't mean that etzem is nitvas chas v'shalom and that everything is said, because nothing can ever be fully said. Everything is perpetually in that state of yearning towards that shlemus that rests above the human capacity of cultivation towards fullness. It's the secret of Tislach Liyom Acharon. We're waiting for that last day. We're waiting for that last thing to arrive. And it can't be fully expressed. The notion that itfasub usa deliba, that it can be grasped in the murmurings of the heart, is only there to teach us that even though you thought maybe it could also be grasped in the heart, the only thing that the heart can grasp is ultimately that even though I thought I could grasp it, I also come to the place of realizing that I can't grasp it. And it just engraves further and further into the ventricles of the heart the reality that even in the territory where I think I can grasp something, ultimately the tachlis is to come back to the place of realizing that I don't know anything. And how, yes, there's ein daimelacha, ultimately ein daimelacha, there's nothing but you, Rebbeinu Shleilam. But then we have to be koila within it, the ein aruch lacha, the secret that also there's an erech, meaning there is some relationship to my ability to come to know you. And that's specifically by way of oilam hazeh. Even though in doimelecha oilam haba, that's the highest hasaga of ayin ha'amiti, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everything, that I have no hasaga whatsoever. The ein aruch is there to reveal that I have to continuously try and come to a place of knowing, and then come to the ein doime, and then come back to an ein aruch, and then come back to an ein doime, of trying to say and coming to a place that I realize I can't say, and then trying to say again, and then realizing that I can't say, because the unsayable nakuda, even though it's essentially unified throughout a person's existence from a moment to moment level, on the levels of ratzon, hane'elam, and tainug hane'elam, and emuna hane'elemes, nevertheless, they have infinite forms of expression, and each nitzutz of the moment can be megala itself in a new way in the secret of the riboy hagvanim that's megala the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the heart can't fully grasp even that which it claims it can fully grasp, because the heart is also limited. But the heart seems to be able to grasp far more than what language is able to convey. There's always an element that is not conveyed within the heart itself. And I try and explain myself by words, umila detalia beliba, in words that try and bring out what's hidden within the heart. V'kula raza'yu, and it's all a secret. It all remains a secret. Ve'alda, again, to look back on this line, ve'alda itztarich mila is parsha mifumya umila detalia beliba v'kula razeihu. Because the heart can express itself and only the mouth can express itself, there's also an attempt to find a language of the heart, a svas halev, that can perhaps uncover that which rests hidden within the lave. And even though the cultivation of vulnerable forms of language and evocative forms of language and all of the riboy gvanim of language and all of the beauty of language and the ability of language to evoke the feeling that the text is coming to convey, at the end of the day, it's all language, and it doesn't convey the innermost point of the heart. It doesn't free us from the necessity of speaking, because every word that's spoken can be transformed, just like Targum, into a vessel that reveals the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chad lekabel darga tata, v'chad lekabel darga ilah. The Imri Fi and Hegyon Libi correspond to a higher level and the lower level, Malchus and Bina. The Hegyon Levi is Bina, Leah, that which is concealed, and the Imre Fi is Rachel, the Dagatata. Milad is Parsha, the Kabel Dagatata, the Itzdarach is Parsha. The word that is expressed aligns and orients itself towards Malchus, which is the lower level that has a need to be expressed. Hahu detalia believe you lakabel darga pnimi yosef kulakachadaihu. But the inner level that cannot be expressed, yet nevertheless it's an expression of that which can't be expressed. The heart is still an act of language. It's the machshavos and the osios of the machshava, but nevertheless it can't break free. But it's expressing its impossibility of being expressed, and that's the perpetual murmuring and yearning of the heart. And Zak the Heilige Zohar Kadosh that Keneged the Alma Tata is that word which is expressed. But Keneged the Alma Ilah is that word of the heart that cannot be expressed. And it's all unified. They're all unified. Malchus and Bina are ultimately the same. Yerushalayim Shalmat and Yerushalayim Shalmala are ultimately the same. Malchus is ultimately unified. It's just being seen in the lens of Leah and Rachel in the secret of Echad Shushtaim. The Ada Amar, and this is why we daven, and this is why David Melech says, Yihi l'ratzon imri fi v'hagyan libi l'fanecha. When we say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, after all is said and done, we say, Ribbon Shlalem, hear that which has been revealed. Hear my Rachel. Hear the parts of myself which are clear. Hear the parts of myself which I know about. Hear the parts of myself that I know I can hang my hat on in terms of my positive deeds, and I have to work on those areas in terms of what I struggle, the area of my Rachel in my life, the area of speech, the area of what I can express and what I can come to you face to face with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But also hear the Hegyon Libi, also hear the unspoken words that rest hidden within that which is being said. Hear the saying within the said. See the invisible within the visible. Uncover the infinite within the finite, and find the wonder within the expression of it all. That's what we're saying. We're saying, Rabbeinu Shlalem, hear my words, but also pay attention to the ultimate fact that I know I can't say what I need to say. Imri fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Kegavne da, just in this way. Amar Yaakov bekatmisa. This is how Yaakov Avinu davens in the beginning. Parish mila, he opens up his words. He says what he could say. Kedekayaus ulebasar sasemila. And in the end, he's silent. He speaks, and then he comes to a place of silence. He goes from Rachel to Leah, the iutalia behegyoina deliba, because he uncovers a deeper form of language, which is the engraving of the contemplation with the heart itself. That is something that cannot become revealed. The chsiv, as Pasuk says, "V'samti es zarecha kachol hayam asher lo yisaper merov." That Knesset Yisrael is blessed with having this particular duality of self, that it's expressed as what it's going to be, kichol hayam, measurement, rachel, constriction, identifiable, asher lo yisaper merov. But nevertheless, it's going to be uncountable. How is it? Is it countable or is it uncountable? Is there a limit or is there no limit? Is it revealed or is it concealed? Elamah, the secret of Yaakov Avinu is that it's Yoishev Ohalim. He has Esav's house as well. He has Yaakov and Rachel. It's both are true. Hacha ihu mila detalia beliba deloy itzdarech leparsha. In the end, after trying to express something, we reach that place of the words that are dependent upon the heart. Deloy itzdarech leparsha. What it means when we say deloy itzdarech leparsha, it doesn't just mean that it can't be said, but in our recognition of the impossibility of saying it, we're accessing that thing by way of the recognition of the impossibility of saying it. Where lo doesn't just mean negation, but rather lo implies a certain additional grasp that comes about by way of hasaga b'derech shlila, by way of negative theology. I can't grasp it. Lo the album, the secret of lo, gam ki ilach begate samavis lo irara ki ate imadi. When I enter into that valley of the shadow of death and descent and targum and concealment, I uncover the secret of lo, which is that it's specifically in the impossibility of grasping something that we come to grasp the deepest levels of grasping. This is how Rabbi Nachman ends so many of his stories. In the end, they saved the princess, but how they saved lo yusupar, it's not told. How it ended, it's not told. That means that it's specifically through the koyach of lo, through this recognition that the highest level of grasp is lo, what I can't grasp. At that point, yeshin yan sheyitapecha kol letova, and that lamed aleph is transformed into an alid lamif, aleph lamed, which is the secret of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, and it's our recognition that it's specifically in the limitations of speech and heartful contemplation. In the limitation, we encounter what it means to be a human being, which is ultimately gives us the strength over and above the malach, which is the fact that we can't express everything we need to do. V'kein itztarech ked amran begin liyachti yichidu shleim ked. And this is what we've explained. This is the way it needs to be, because ultimately this is the true yichud. Min ha'olam ad ha'olam ad takel. From this world into that world. Yerushalayim shalmala, bina, concealment, purity. Yerushalayim shalmata, rachel, revelation, difficulty, that which can be expressed, that which can't be expressed, that which is measurable, that which is unmeasurable. David and Yosef, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Torah she'balpeh, Torah she'bechsav, Torah sanigla, Torah sanister, Torah and tefillah, bitachon and emuna, Chasidus and misnagdus, the Ramak and the Arizal, Ahava and Yira, darkness and light, Butzina de Kardenusa, Viradachya, all of the different alignments, they all represent this dual state of the unity that is fundamentally necessary for us to reveal, which is the secret of Leah and Rachel, that which needs to be expressed and that which can't be expressed. Zochan inun sadikayu the yode lesidre shavche de marinan kedekayos. Praiseworthy are those tzaddikim like Yaakov Avinu who know how to arrange, how to prepare the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the right way, to start off with that which can be said, and to end off with that which cannot be said, to reveal that everything that has been said is ultimately dependent upon the revelation that nothing is fully said ever, and that even after all is said and done, it's as if nothing has been said yet, and Torah Hashem Tamima. Ulemave ba'usehon, and to bring out the depth of their tefillah, begin kach, and therefore it's written, Vayomer li avdi ata Yisrael asher b'cha aspire. It's specifically you, Yisrael, who has the ability to reveal the grandeur and the teferes that emerges from each and every part of human experience, that it's going from the highest place to the lowest place, from the oilam ad ha'oilam. Siv gam es hasheni v'gam es hashlishi. The Zohar Kadosh bases itself on the pasuk, and it goes and say it's also this and it's also that. This nature of gam. That Terasvi, I see over here that Rav Reuven Margulis brings, that Terasvi says that this additional Nakuda is not necessarily rooted in the Zohar Kadosh, but nevertheless it was printed in the Zohar Kadosh as a Haggah by Eza Chacham, and so we're going to look at it just because the Hashkacha is that it's here. And it talks about this nature of Gam, that also the second and also the third, which is really ultimately the secret of Targum, the secret of Gam, ki elach b'geit sama v'slo yirara ki ati madi, of Nacham ish Gam zu l'toiva, of Gam, of v'gam 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 charvona zachor latov, the secret of Gamliel, of Gamlasu tov v'lora, of Birchas HaGomel, of the Gamal that we spoke about, the dreaming of the camel reveals that there was death that was nickness on someone, and then they had the ability to come out the other side with illumination and light. It represents the descent for the sake of the ascent. It represents the descent down into the loss of speech for the sake of recuperating speech by way of translating it into my own experience. And the only way to process that is the realization of Gam. Gam appears at first to be something additional. When I need something additional, it implies that the first thing is not enough. But ultimately, the secret of the supplement and the addition is that the thing that came first was enough, but then I add something to reveal how it's even more than what I originally thought it was. Because we can't add Torah Sheba'al Peh onto Torah Shebechsav, but we can add onto something that's already perfect, which is Torah Shebechsav, and just add something, not because we need to add something, but because it's a Tosefes Kishut, and it's a logic of the supplement that reveals even more light than was imaginable. Lashon HaKodesh doesn't need Targum to make it what it is, but when Lashon HaKodesh descends into Targum, it reveals a deeper capacity of Lashon HaTargum than ever before, and then what could have been understood. The secret of Gam is a remez to the three forms and stages of redemption that Klal Yisrael are going to go through the three tzaddikim of Moshe, Mordechai, and Mashiach. Moshe in Mitzrayim, Mordechai in Purim, and Mashiach Tzidkenu Tekef Umiyad Mamish. And there's a hint over here that Gam is Rosh Tevos, Goel Moshe, Goel Mordechai, Goel Mashiach. This element of Gam, this doubledness, this inclusion, this willingness to include that which appears to be the opposite within the framework of the all, so that the all can be revealed to contain its opposite within itself. This is the secret of the Zohar Kadosh. This is the secret of Aramaic. This is the secret of exile. This is the secret of the unification of Rachel and Leah, and the realization that the depths of everything that is said is the depth of the unsaid, and that the depth of the unsaid is all that we want to try and say. And there's a silence that rests at the heart of speech, and a speech that rests at the heart of silence, till we can come to that place of Keser Elyon Olav Nikra, where the machlokas between Leah and Rachel is Misyashev, and it's going to be a revelation of Rachel Hagadoyla that includes Leah within it, and the concealment and the revelation are going to be revealed to be two parts of the same exact coin, and it's going to be the secret of the Maila of Nishmas Yisrael over and above the Malachim, when in the future the Malachim are going to be asking us what's going on with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's only by way of encountering the concealment and the Tzimtzumim that will come to cultivate the Kalim necessary to reveal the Gam Kielach B'geit Salmaves, that Gulas Moshe, Gulas Mordechai, and Gulas Mashiach Be'ezras Hashem.